Let your curiosity rise.
Matrix webcast,
Where the human spirit flies. Matrix webcast. Where the human spirit flies.
Hey, welcome to the Medbix. I don't know. Welcome to the Medbix webcast. This is Raman Annamaraju. I'm the host. We have a lot of things to cover. We have two beautiful women and a very smart, beautiful woman on the podcast today. It's going to be exciting. Before that, let me introduce you. My co-host is always present. She's inspiring to audience and me. Dr. Susan Davis. She's a doctor of nursing practice, joining from Fort Myers, Florida. Welcome, Susan.
There we
Welcome,
are. Hi,
what's going on?
Hey, long time no see. Fantastic to be here.
I know you had a long trip, so you've been traveling all over the country. My hometown, Atlanta.
Yes.
You've been doing a lot of traveling.
Yes,
so
I have.
So it's going to be the productive?
Oh, yeah. Very productive. Very productive. Awesome. Amazing trip. Loved your hometown, Atlanta. Had lots of great adventures. Fantastic food, wonderful people, great business, and it's good to be back in Florida. Thank you very much. All is well.
Yeah. Thank you. So good. I'm quite happy about that. Navya, can you bring my presentation back? My presentation, yeah. I want to show something important before I bring our guest. Tomorrow, this is a presentation I'm going to do, but actually, there was a liftoff today. There was Artemis 2 launch happened near where Susan is. It's not that far from here in Florida. Jeremy Hansen of Canada, actually, Christian Coach and Victor Glover and Reed Wiseman, they're all going to they're lifting. They're not landing on the moon. They're not walking on the moon. They're going like a swing shot. I'm going to show you. So the reason I brought it up is his wife, Jeremy Hansen's wife, Dr. Catherine Hansen. She's a OBGYN doctor from Texas, originally from Canada, Alberta. I went to school there, actually. Cold. She's from a Cold Lake. The name of the town is called Cold Lake. So she's quite busy, and she appeared on my podcast a couple of times, and one remarkable woman. She is a very inspiring woman to talk with. I want to bring her back. She's very busy with So her husband is Jeremy Hansen. He is a Canadian space agency from. They're all lifted up today. What he does is very straight. The mission is very, people don't know. This mission is a human. Susan, this mission is actually, people think it is something testing technology or AI. Is not. It is a human endurance testing flight. They want to know how the humans, the radiation exposure, the gravity, microgravity environment, how they behave. Human blood pressure, their psychological, their physiological, all those things, they're going to measure that. It's a human and how they interact with the systems under the pressure. That is the goal of this mission. Is a human, actually more of a medicine rather than a technology trip. So it's like they throw a frisbee. It's a very interesting. They don't use a lot of power. What they use is they use the gravitational power of the earth, and they throw a frisbee, like a frisbee coming back to you. That's what they're doing. They throw and they use the gravitational power of that earth, and then move around the moon and comes back. Is that gravitational energy they're using? That gravitational energy they use is a very fascinating. Using the nature itself without any external power. I mean, they use some external power, but to lift off from the Earth's gravity, Earth's atmosphere. But that is I'm very happy. Catherine Hansen must be a little bit nervous, but everything seems to be went very well. So what it is a test for Susan is a best place for testing. Nothing is there. No special consults, no rapid evacuation, no images. It's a low resource setting, the space mission. So that's why they want to learn what are the things that humans face during the long flights, if they send it to Mars, or if they should do in the future to Jupiter, Eureka, all those Europa, all those things are they're considering how we do that interplanetary distance, then maybe eventually interstellar distance. That's what I want to tell. But um, let me introduce you. Our guest now is a
So first of all, Romana, that's super exciting, and thank you for pausing our show just for a second, because that's a very hot topic. I mean, that's happening today, and I don't know if everybody understands that it's really about the physiological function of the human in space. That's the major mission. It's pretty cool.
yeah.
It's a very tight quarters. It's like they're literally camping in a very tight quarters, 1 woman, 3 males, for almost 10 days in space. It's a physiological mission, to be sure.
Yeah. So we have a very good doctor who measures all the, by the end of the, she may, Dr. LaBarbara, her name, she's a pediatrician, she's a ADHD and dyslexia, I'm not a doctor.
Dyslexia.
Dyslexia. So she may find out at the end of the show that I'm a potential patient for that. So let me bring a doctor. She's a Stanford-trained doctor, and let me bring her. Welcome, Dr. LaBarbara.
Hello.
Welcome to the Venbix webcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good evening.
Yeah, I wanted to see that there is a OBGYN doctor. Not you take care of the kids, and
We work together.
So this mission is actually human endurance. One of them is actually ADHD. All these things play a role during the mission. How they interact with the systems. That is where you come in the picture. Tell me your background, a little bit professional background, if yours, Barbara, if you don't mind. Shall I call you Barbara, or what do people call you, LaBarbara?
Yeah, you can call me Allie. I usually go by Allie. My
Allie,
patients
okay.
call me, my patients usually call me Dr. Allie.
Dr. Allie, okay.
But So my background, so I've been a pediatrician about 20 years in general pediatrics. So meaning that I take care of all different kinds of things. I feel like I've had a pretty exciting trajectory in that I've worked in a lot of different environments. When I initially started my career, I was a hospitalist, which at the time was kind of a burgeoning or new field in pediatrics. This idea that, you only work in the hospital and take care of sicker children. And then I loved that, but missed working with families. And so then started to work in private practice, and I did a lot of integrative medicine, and then started working at an academic medical center and did a lot of teaching, which I loved, and then have over the years sort of continued to do general pediatrics, but really developed an interest in ADHD and dyslexia, and then had several really exciting opportunities to help develop a new telemedicine model for chronic pediatric care, and then also kind of participate in, evaluating the health and safety of AI. So I feel like it's been kind of a wild ride, but the through line has always been, how do we provide the best possible care to the most children? And it's been great.
I'm not a doctor. I'm going to ask you an administrative question. You started as a physician in the academic or in the hospital system, then as a hospitalist, then moved on to the private practice. What is your experience that transition?
The transition from hospital to outpatient?
To private practice, yeah.
It's wild. It's I think that going to be a hospitalist from being from a resident was very natural, right? Because at least at the time, so much of our training was hospital based. And then when I first started in general practice, I didn't have children, and so parents would ask me about behavior and all kinds of like, how should we get our kids to bed? And I was like, I don't know. So, obviously I built those skill sets over the years, but I would say it was the biggest transition for me was sort of going from hospitalist to outpatient, because I felt very prepared and very comfortable doing, ICU care, transports and things like that. But toddlers, I was like, oh, I don't know.
I find your
I'll
I'm
give it
sorry,
to you,
Ramona.
Susan, 1 second. There's a question, then I'll hand over to Susan. Let me ask you. My children says that to me all the time. So I have a ADHD, So what is that? Why is increasing ADHD, or we have the systemic pressure, or in general, what is this ADHD presence is going on autism spectrum is under that is maybe
Yeah.
a separate issue. Let us talk about ADHD first. What is the reason that is increasing, or it is we are finding more, or
Yeah.
is it genetic or psychological? What is that?
I think that's a great question, and it's one that comes up a lot, right? Because we always want to make sure that our diagnosis rates are matching our incidence rates, right? That we're not overdiagnosing or underdiagnosing. And I think a couple of things. I mean, ADHD has been in the medical literature for as far back as 240 years, so it's not new. I think that, the incidence rate is generally quoted as anywhere from 4 to 7%. I think that traditionally what we're seeing now is a bit of a course correction where we're just kind of paying attention more and picking it up more. So I don't think that we're at a point where we're overdiagnosing. I do think it's important to talk about, focus and attention and executive function exists along a bell curve, right? So you'll always have people at the height of the bell curve who are very high functioning, people who are more average, and then people who are lower functioning. And I think that the sort of my job is to kind of look and parse out among those people at the other end of the bell curve, the lower end of the bell curve, like what percentage of those people really have a disorder or a dysfunction or a major impact on functioning. And one thing I want to say is, I think current life isn't great for anyone's executive functioning, right? Like, I think that's why. So, you hear all the time, well, I think everyone has a little ADHD. And I think really what that is I think we all have some degree of executive function that's exacerbated by technology and our diet and poor sleep and things like that. So that's a long-winded way of saying that ADHD has always been there. I don't think we're overdiagnosing, but I think what we're all kind of feeling is this general sense of executive dysfunction.
Well, what I
That
was
is
going to say, I'm sorry, Ramona. What I was going to say is your course that you described, your trajectory from hospitalist to outpatient, which by the way is extremely, for those in the audience, when you work acute care and you're in the walls of a hospital, people are there for acute reasons.
Yeah.
When you go to the outpatient area, you're dealing with more Monday through Friday type stuff. But are you really? I mean, people stay at home a lot longer, thinking I've got that appointment in 10 days, so I'm going to go see my care provider in the outpatient type of a scenario when they probably maybe should be in acute care. But what you've just described, Dr. Ally, is home to hospital. So we talk a lot about what's happening in the hospital, but if you go outpatient and then home, this is what you were just referring to when it comes to any disease state, for especially pediatrics and or the entire family unit. And that is kind of the functional medicine portion of the reality of life and where we are way before we get to the hospital. So I guess my question is how much do you feel now, in the perspective of how you've grown through your practice all these years to now today, how much functional medicine is important? Not important, but it's coming into your particular practice, pre-clinic, before clinical practice.
Yeah, I think that's an outstanding question. And I think that really cuts to the heart of what so many of us pediatric, if I can speak for all of us, right? I think that's really what we're struggling with, right? Which is, when I first started my career a long time ago, so long ago, so much of what we did was sort of health, great well checks and urgent care, right? And over the course of my career alone, so much of what we do now is behavioral health and mental health. And so absolutely. I mean, I think, the rates of depression, anxiety, chronic care like obesity, so many more kids are coming forward with attentional issues because they're just not able to function anymore. So I would say a massive shift in my practice is, I think, a direct result of kind of home-based or other sort of functioning. I think that's what you're asking. That's what
Yeah,
I
I
feel.
mean, how can
Yeah,
you take care of people in the hospital if we don't consider what's happening at home? And then how do you bridge that? And someone who's been from hospital all the way back to home now, pretty much,
yeah,
because
yeah,
you're telehealth extraordinaire when it comes to pediatrics, which maybe that will segue right into that question. How does
yeah,
that come into today? Your work in telehealth
yeah.
with mental health and care at home.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been really exciting. I never ever thought that I would be a telehealth provider. That's, it just wasn't on my bingo card. But, it was just such a natural evolution in terms of, how can we reach more people, and how can I see kids across the state, right? Which is really exciting for me because I can see kids in resource poor areas, or, just areas where, maybe their pediatrician or their providers don't have the time or the capacity to kind of really delve into some of this stuff. So I think telehealth is huge in sort of expanding our outreach and supporting more families. And I'm really, again, was never on my bingo card, but I'm really excited to be able to see it grow and implement it.
But just to wrap that thought up, Romana, before you hop in, I just want to, I think what I'm thinking is you must be reaching so many that you wouldn't reach without telehealth. I just know, youth all the way up to adolescents, they're having a handful of my own and working with friends and colleagues that have them. It's difficult to get them help. But so to be able to come to them, I would think would be monumental in making some positive ripples in their lives, because you can come to them through their device. They don't want to go in person these days.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I absolutely. And I think too, having a different model or having a different setup, I get to spend, I get to spend more time with them. I get to talk about more things, if I need to see them in 2 weeks, then I see them in 2 weeks, So I think not only just the access, but also just a completely different structure, really allows for a different kind of experience.
Excellent.
My son, I used to take my son to the hospital. Oh my God, you have to wait 4 hours, 3 hours. You're really taking that into the. We need that, in the country. That is a telehealth part of it, particularly for kids. They're grown now, but at the time it's a frustrating. I have to come out the middle of the meeting or something, and then it is really. I mean, it's a change. There's a huge change, a required change that is required. Let me ask you another one. Is a big topic. Everybody is talking about it. Is autism.
Autism.
The autism spectrum. It is prevalent. One of my friend, Dr. Wooly Chetipalli, is a very active with his daughter and everything. He does a lot of things. What do you think of autism? What is the reason is increasing, or what is spectrum? 1 in 10 is going to be having a autism problem, and that's what they're saying. Is that true, or is it serious problem? What is that a national issue we need to address?
Yeah, I mean, I think autism is a huge and very important area in pediatrics. Not only like you were sort of saying, like how it impacts the child, how it impacts the family, how it impacts attainment, future attainment, educational life attainment. Um, so absolutely, I would say it's a massive issue. I think it's a multifactorial issue as well as to sort of why we're seeing it, why it's increasing. I mean, again, we know there's a massive genetic component to it, right? So whether it's genetic mutation or epigenetics or just sort of a shit, one of the things we know too is having children older. I mean, I had my children. I was not a young parent, but having children older can sort of has risks for increased presentation of autism, right? So I think there are a lot of reasons why we may be seeing it more, and I think we're also just picking up on it more. I hear all the time in my interviews with parents, right, where we're assessing children for ADHD, learning differences, autism. and we'll ask any family history, and I cannot tell you how many times I hear the answer, well, no official diagnoses, but we always kind of suspected that I had it or my uncle had it or whatever, right? So I definitely, it's been there, right? Like same thing with ADHD, it's been around. But I think we're just hopefully getting better at identifying it and supporting it.
So doesn't that come back? Ramona and I often talk about the root of everything comes back to education. And I know you have a passion for education. Where does it begin? How much can you educate the children? How much do you have to educate the parents and the families?
Mhm.
Chicken or the egg? How far back can we go, and how much can we get involved the entire family?
Yeah, and I think that's really it, right? I think it's really education is so critical to me, and I feel so lucky because that's so much of what I do with parents, right? So I always start with the parents. And I think the reason that I spend so much time explaining sort of the neurobiology of ADHD, like the neurobiology of learning differences, the neurobiology of autism, because I think not only you to really support a child, you have to understand why they do what they do and where it comes from. And so often we talk about, even like in like kids with ADHD can also often be seen as defiant, right? But is it defiance, or is it just their prefrontal cortex behaving the way that we expect it would based on how it's wired, right? So I think that it's fundamental to educate the parents, and that's where I start. And if grandparents or other people want to be involved, come on in. The more the merrier, right? Because not only does understanding foster acceptance, but it also fosters compassion. And when you can model that as an adult for your child, that builds their self-understanding, their compassion, their self-acceptance. And I see that with ADHD, dyslexia, learning differences, when you can explain to a child, well, yeah, the end of the day is hard for you because you're cognitively depleted, and here's what we need to do because this is how your brain works. So for me, I feel like education is where you have to start. And I start with the parents, and then I like to involve the children, but my biggest hope when they're young is to help the parents model self-acceptance and self-compassion and self-understanding.
Beautiful.
Without it, I can't. The stress response from the entire family would just be monumental. Without understanding it, without someone like you, Dr. Ellie, taking that time to educate the parents on what this is and then giving them tools. So recognize the problem, call for help, Dr. Ellie, and then what are our actions? What are our action steps that we can take and apply at home? And then I have
Yeah.
one more before we go back to you, Ramona. I understand that you are a certified sleep coach.
Mhm.
Specifically, you have something in your toolbox for sleep tips.
Yeah. Yeah.
So neurodivergent sleep challenges. Do they have people with neurodivergence have more sleep challenges than the rest of us?
For sure. Yeah. And again, I think it goes back down to that sort of like when you think of it's a brain-based problem, right? So one of the things we know particularly about kids with ADHD is that their circadian rhythms tend to be shifted, right? So when you talk to parents of ADHD kids, they'll be like, they don't go to bed till late and they're early risers, right? And that makes sense, right? Because, in their suprachiasmatic nucleus, the way that they sort of release melatonin and the way that they build up adenosine during the day is different. It's shifted, right? And so, again, with that idea of education, I mean, so many parents of kids with ADHD have been told over the years, well, you just need a good bedtime routine, or, things like that, right? And then they feel awful because they're like, well, I tried that, but it didn't work. And so if you can come to them and say, well, here's the brain-based reason for why your child stays up late. And really, like one of the things I talk a lot with parents about is that it's not just about your bedtime routine. It's not about melatonin. It's about consistency and actual like light. Like when you wake up in the morning, like we want your child to be exposed to natural sunlight or a light lamp of 10,000 lux for 20 to 30 minutes. Like they can do it while they're eating breakfast, just eating your Cheerios or whatever, getting your light therapy. And that can start to reset your circadian rhythm so that you release melatonin earlier in the evening, right? And
That's
for
huge.
yeah, it's super cool, right? And so, and again, it's just this idea, like so many people with neurodivergence, parents and kids, can feel awful about themselves because they're like, well, I know I'm supposed to go to bed early, but I can't. And sort of if you give them the education and the tools of like, well, try this, then they can sort of start to build those positive corrective experiences and have a better outcome.
And frankly, if nobody's sleeping, the health of the entire home comes down.
For sure. Then everyone's miserable. And then back to our earlier point, no one's prefrontal cortex is working well, and everyone feels like they have ADHD. And then we all just feel awful about ourselves. Right?
Sure.
This is a beautiful sentence. You said that this is like education of teaching a compassion to the kids. No, I would have more emphasized it if that is the case. Somebody, a pediatrician, would have spoken with me. It's a really, I mean, that's normal, of course. I would teach them, but it's such a powerful way of giving that trait to the children. Is a really powerful. What you're saying is really commendable. What you that bringing to the front lines of the discussion.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, you're in the Silicon Valley. You and me, we are all in Silicon Valley. Uber drivers onwards, everybody talks about AI, artificial intelligence. So where did you get this bug for you, the artificial intelligence bug? You there.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I like to think I'm always really curious. I try to be curious and open. So I think, AI, I was like, what is this? And if I think back over my own lifetime, right? Like, I'm so old that I remember when I got my first cell phone. I remember when someone told me about the internet, right? So I feel like my whole adult life has been preparing me for this moment, right? Like, what's the latest technology? And so, just learning about it and learning how, people wanted to bring it into healthcare, or how, it's being brought into healthcare and even education now. I think that's a real area where I have a lot of interest, is sort of AI in early childhood education or other forms of education. So yeah, I think I wanted to kind of learn about it. I want to understand it. I think as a pediatrician, our first instinct is always to want to sort of like protect kids and make sure that things are safe for kids and understand how things affect the developing brain. Right. So I think just the buzz about it and kind of the implications of it just really piqued my interest.
So that journey that moved on to the next level for you, you're talking about AI safety. Let us talk about AI safety. I presented a couple of topics on AI. One of them is that black box problem is still a problem. It is not. People don't discuss enough. It's not like in software you can go back and then debug the problem. You cannot debug the patient, after the fact, right? So what do you think of where you come in the safety level that AI comes in the picture?
Yeah, just in terms of, well, I think again, this idea of education, right? Like, I think so many people, I talk a lot to families about, AI hallucinations, like even in sort of how patients use it, right? Like AI hallucinations and how AI can be non-deterministic. Like, hey, put that same prompt in 3 times and see if you get the same answer, right? I do that with my daughter all the time,
Yeah.
or like, sycophancy, like, have AI, I have patients do this, right? Like, type in a question and then say that you don't like it and then see what happens and keep doing that, right? And so yeah, I think sort of number one is sort of patient level or user level kind of education and just being aware of what the limitations of it are. And then I think, I was lucky enough to kind of participate in a project where I could actually like help teach or help guide the model or help create sort of an evaluation tool that could be used, furthermore to kind of assess the safety and accuracy of AI. So I think both on the user level and then hopefully, helping to contribute to the creation of tools for broader kind of safety was kind of where I feel like I can contribute.
I love that. And I think when you say on a broader scale, a lot of the guests that we have on these days have a global perspective. And so I think it's very important when we're talking about these innovations, especially when it comes to quality and safety. Are we talking about it in, Silicon Valley? Are we talking about it across the United States, or is it a global? We know that this is a human deal. So it has to be, we have to have global sharing of this knowledge. It's moving so quickly.
For sure.
I feel like what you were just saying, when you said on a broader scale, is it to a global scale?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And just even, if you think in terms of sheer numbers, right? Like what we need is data, to help sort of train and sort of ensure the accuracy of answers, right? And so even if you think of pediatrics, like one of the challenges in pediatrics is that we often don't have as much data for a variety of reasons compared to adults. So even if you're thinking about creating sort of systems to ensure safety, you need global data. You need a lot of data. And so that's the project that I got to participate in. We had physicians from 60 countries, right?
Oh, wow.
Like,
Okay, great.
right? Like, yeah. So yeah, I think you do need to think globally for sure.
Because if we don't connect those dots, Ramon and I have guests on here who are, let's say, like amazing, brilliant researchers creating resources for our planet that the world needs to know about. But they're in these little labs in India, Mumbai and Dubai. I mean, they're all over the world, but without I would say a way for us to come together as humans, recognizing our AI compatibilities and getting it out of the small areas and bringing them to a focus like we are this evening with some of your work. It's so imperative for us to come together and share knowledge right now. Those big data sets, but sharing.
Yeah, and I also
go ahead, please.
No, and I just was going to say too that, I think this is the time to collaborate. And the way I think about something may not be the way that somebody else thinks about something, but like, I bet you that both of those will be useful, So I think having different, a scientist in Mumbai may have a completely different orientation or thought process than someone here, right? But like, how great to be able to sort of marry those or collaborate on those or align those. So yeah.
The greatest shame would be to miss that thought
For sure.
process from that great human that might have wide-reaching effects and we've never heard it. I think all of us have those gifts, and that's really the point of our show. And speaking to people just like you, pediatricians and doctors and amazing humans, is let's share.
For sure.
I had a guest, Harvey Castro. He's one of the doctors. He says that he used a ChatGPT, for example, to teach the children, 5-year-old children. How do I teach education? So say don't eat that ice cream too many times or whatever it is. So he asked ChatGPT to write a book. How do I communicate with a 5-year-old? And then it gave a very beautiful illustration. That's where I see, because you are very passionate about education, do you think that is useful right there at the crossroads of that kind of these LLMs?
So kind of using them in education or
education too. Suppose you can go into the mind of a 5-year-old child and see these are things they understand. Maybe it can print a book in a comic book or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, it's so funny that you should ask that, because I was just this past week talking to this amazing woman that's creating education programs for kids with AI and sort of all of everything that goes into her thought process. And so I think what comes up for me when you ask that question is, yes, I think that there is definitely capacity for that. But I think that just like with medical AI or with other things, like we want people from the education space to be participating and guiding us and giving us insights, right? Because I think that, they're like, one of the things I was talking about with her is that, sometimes you put an educational request in or have an educational desire, and what comes back is not at all what you want or not at all what is helpful. And I, as a physician, don't know that I would be able to parse that out, but she can kind of look at that and be like, nope. So yeah, I think for any of these fields, right, we want to have kind of experts or leaders in the field. There's definitely that potential there, but I think we want to have this idea of like shepherds for different fields kind of guiding us and helping us to understand what's good and what's not. Yeah.
I love that. There's a huge flux of clinicians coming into the innovation space because they're passionate about more than just one-on-one patient care. And so there's ways for us now to share our knowledge with the masses, but quite frequently, we don't have an education in education.
Mm-hmm.
So I say that oftenly. I teach a lot and I have awesome content, so I think, until I let it pass real educators and or run it through the lens of an educator. So, it's interesting now publishing. It wasn't just long ago I had in my doctoral work, I wrote every single word. Every
Yes.
single word. And like very long document. And now here we are, a couple years later, and now you just write a little disclosure. Yep, I had a language model help, and you can write this sucker. I'm like, oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
fascinating times.
Yeah.
You're talking about innovation and education. One of the things is that I'm a physicist, so I present some of the topics related. The biggest thing, Dr. Ali, that I brought this the podcast is, that you're in Stanford and even in we are in Silicon Valley. Interdisciplinary field is a very critical to understand AI. That's why I want to bring all the different fields. I'm going to present one of those topics, and when I get back, I will ask you about pediatric obesity a little bit, and then how we are going to use AI should be used in the future, and where is that artificial AGI is going to be play a role is it going to replace the doctors or not? We're going to ask you about that. Navya, can you put that in my presentation, please? And
Sure.
you can comment on anything that you like. Where my presentation is okay. Yeah, that's you can come. You can jump in anytime you want to talk about. Yeah, please. This is about. I'm going to talk about a little bit about today. Symmetry and beauty. That is a biology, beauty to biology. It is a. That that's the pictures are very popular figures. Marilyn Monroe and Denzel Washington, Aishwarya, the Indian actress Aishwarya Roy. Why it came on the polls? They are the most beautiful people they recognize, because when you have an axis, when you draw an axis between the eyebrows, and the left side is more similar to the right side, they are considered more beautiful. That they consider them as more beautiful. That is called symmetry in a sense. Symmetry is the balanced consistency of structure of function across space and time. It is a structural, like a beauty is a part of the structural. Functional, for example, protein folding, or you talk about medicines. I'm going to talk about functional medicines, very interesting medicines. Then behavioral is also, Dr. Ali is talking about it. That could be symmetries involved in the inherently behind the scenes. Behavioral symmetry. One of them is one of the symmetry algorithms that based on symmetry algorithms are hot pill, for example. They both of them know more than I do. When they congest hot pill, there's a lungs the fluid build up in the lungs, and then their voice can change. The symmetry algorithm IAP can detect hot pill way in advance before you go ultrasound or MRI or anything like that. It can detect way earlier than before. The phone itself, that's one of the apps is called Eero, Cardio Eero is one of the apps that can detect fluid overload. That is one of the symmetry algorithm. Symmetry is missing. The lack of symmetry is a mathematical. Symmetry is a mathematical function. So, and the smiles, for example, smile can detect a stroke. If there is a smile there, that there's an app called Fast App. It can detect subtle changes in the smile, and it can warn us long before you measure anything. Either blood pressure or anything like that. It can measure those things. This app. So it's a very beautiful. The phone is really interfacing with all these things. You can detect a stroke with the phone app, with the symmetry algorithm. It is a symmetry of the face. It is symmetry of the smile. It can change it detects that subtle differences. Then, if you go into the next, the walking neurodegenerative diseases, in a gait walking, the gait, there's anomaly in the gaits. It can do, phone. You don't have to take a picture, the video of the walking. Because our phones have accelerometer and then gyroscope, both of them. It has inside in our phone system. So they can detect any changes in the walking system. Gait analysis, it can do gait analysis and can say it is a Parkinson or Alzheimer's is one of the signature things it can give. That's a symmetry algorithm. These are all came from a symmetry based algorithm. So the OCD, I hope Susan's house is not like that. I will get out fast.
No, but my mom's is, I can tell you that.
Yeah. So if you have those kind of a refrigerator, those are the behavioral symmetry. It's for the OCD symmetry need. It is actually they want more symmetry. They want more order in the symmetry. So symmetry is not a visual; it is experiential here. That is a so one of the things they are saying that is may not be is a need for symmetry, need for over symmetry. It could be genetic, it could be psychological. Genetic is a multi-factor disease, could be. So that is one of the things. If I see I had a friend up there in Philadelphia, oh my God, if I take the cap off that and she will gone, everybody going to the depression. so that is a very very one of those things that is a obsessive compulsory disorder is a kind of a symmetry, behavioral symmetry breaking. So what is these conditions symmetry can bring? Stroke, you can do facial symmetry, you can do the smile, through smile, you can detect a stroke. That is a symmetry change, is a facial change. Heart failure, voice change you can breath patterns is observable. It's a heart failure, congestive heart failure. You can neurodegenerative disease, gait, walking. You can detect. OCD is a cognitive symmetry. You can see that. You don't have to go anywhere, but you can see in the refrigerator itself. So across voice, face, movement, and behavior symmetry reflects disease signal. Symmetry itself is a very powerful signal. A new lens is a diagnostic lens in the future of the medicine. So as a next generation diagnostic lens is the voice, face, walk, brain, all of them in the phone. Those are the new diagnostic lenses are coming to our things. That is I didn't tell you. For example, for the walking gait analysis, Apple Health has a very good one. It actually detects a lot of those. It can give you warning signs. Symmetry is a pattern. That pattern is embedded in the laws of physics. It actually came out of the laws of physics are not fundamental. These laws of symmetry are fundamental. That's what M.E. Nather, a scientist, found out. That is, even Einstein had a hard time understanding it, why there's a laws of physics are fundamental to all the symmetry in the nature. It's a nature is teaching us something interesting. So she was a mathematician from Germany, as a M.E. Nather. He was born in 1882 in Bavaria, Germany, and she is the first time Einstein had a problem with his general relativity problem. Think about it. Einstein had a problem. A woman came to rescue, and she gave a M.E. Nather theorem. She was briefly jumped into physics side of it from mathematics. She was a professor in Germany, and then her teacher was one of the famous Hilbert teacher. So she moved. She came up with the beautiful laws. These are the laws that I forgot that to upload the video, but I'm going to explain to you. Time symmetry, all the physics laws come from the laws of symmetry. The nature itself gives those laws. The time symmetry, for example, if you throw a ball, it is today or tomorrow or day after tomorrow, they all exactly work same. That comes out very as strange as it seems to be. It came the conservation principle. The energy neither conserved nor destroyed. That principle came from time symmetry. These are the mathematical functions. Rotational symmetry, for example, angular movement, the rotational symmetry, snowflake, for example, whichever way you put that symmetry, whichever way you move around, still same. Say the snowflake. Yeah, that's why this is a conservation of the angular momentum. For example, the scatters, when they move around, they close their arms. The reason was that for it to conserve the angular momentum. So this is the rotate. This nature has that. Is these laws are embedded in the nature. The law, we are physicists. We are like all these laws are cheat sheet for us. We spatial symmetry is a momentum conservation. You do it here or in Mumbai, the result of the same experiment is not going to change. These are the laws of symmetry. It's a beautiful laws that she came out and gave us very insight into the nature, the Emmy Nather. So that symmetry, actually, what symmetry can teach to AI. What is symmetry is teaching us AI is if you have a AI, what they do in the beginning days, at least in the brute force. So if you want to recognize a cat, you have to give all poses of you have to feed all the poses into the brute force. What symmetry law says, if you understand symmetry, you don't need all of them. You need one cat image and then use a symmetry, reflection, inversion, and reflection symmetry, and all those things. If you see in the mirror, that's a reflective symmetry. If you go into the different place, that's the rotational symmetry. If you move around, these are all symmetries you can use to move the same data, instead of adding a new data. So the need for the data is going to be drastically reduced by understanding the nature. So brute force became simple, beautiful symmetry with the simple. You don't need this data appetite they're talking about is not really required. If you really understand the nature, we need the least amount of data than this unending appetite for the data. That could be a little bit political in my view. I don't want to say anything to
yeah, but it's fascinating. Fascinating, poignant point. I love that poignant point. That's pretty cool, Ramana.
The symmetry appears in medicine, actually, in a ketamine and esketamine. These are all they're mirror symmetry. They same molecule. If you see in the mirror, that's a reflection, that's you. But in certain situations, that's different. That is an extraordinary situation. If you see in the mirror, it's exactly mirror symmetry. That molecule is the other molecule, esketamine, is the mirror symmetry, the reflection of the ketamine molecule. But ketamine molecule, they use for anesthesia. Susan and Dr. Ali may know more than I do. They use for the anesthesia. Esketamine, they use for depression. Those are the two different things. For example, the omeprazole is for the proton inhibitor. They use it, but there is a same medicine reflection. They take a reflected medicine, use become an axiom. So if you understand the symmetry, one medicine, we have unlimited potential by using all these symmetry mechanisms to see what are the drugs can do, benefits or harm. Some of them can do harm also. For example, thalidomide or something like that. That same symmetry, that is thalidomide, I think. It is they used to give it a morning sickness, and then it caused a very deadly effects of birth defects in the 1950s. So those are you got to watch. So symmetry can be very useful in medicine, and it can generate a lot of data for you with the existing medicines itself. So that is a mirror medicines, I call. So she paved the way for this mathematical framework. This woman, extraordinary woman, Emmy Nather, and then eventually she moved to Philadelphia. Last 10 years of her life, I think. She was teaching as a professor in Brand Moore College in Philadelphia, and then at the prime age of 53, she died with ovarian cancer, and then she was cremated, and then her ashes were distributed in the grounds of that thing. So on the grounds of the Brand Moore College. So one of the extraordinary people, the science, modern technology, modern things come from some of these people who gave such extraordinary contributions. That's why I want to remind them these are the things that, they're not that woe that is somewhere in the past. They are all present everywhere with us. They're helping us from the guiding to the humanity, the next level. Thank you for watching. Let me bring my friends. How do you like it, Dr. Ali?
That was really cool. It was so funny because when you were talking about symmetry, the first thing that came to my mind with that slide with the cats was enantiomers, right? Like the mirror image.
Yandemus, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because organic chemistry was one of my favorite classes of all time. And so I spent a lot of time, learning about enantiomers and how they're similar and how they're different. And as you mentioned, in clinical medicine, they can have significant differences. So yeah, I think that it's so funny that was sort of your next slide. But yeah, very, very interesting. Very interesting and thought provoking too, because I find myself going back to sort of the mirror image and is that helpful or not, or how is that, what are the implications of that kind of symmetry? So very interesting.
Great. That was an awesome presentation as always, Romana. And thank you for once again bringing something that was older than today's technology, where I always think that we're trading entropy for entropy. What was versus now what is, and we're thinking, out with the old and in with the new. And yet here we, once again, Romana just showed that what was our origin, the origins of science are proving true today. If we slow down and apply them the way Romana does continuously, takes original concepts and shows how they're reflected today in this AI world, and really gives us pause. So thank you, Romana. Awesome.
Yeah, Dr. Ali is an example. Even both of you, you study science. Science is a fundamental. There is no way. That's why I laugh at people who do not understand science when they say I can replace doctors. It is not possible. It is not. It is a human, that judgment. See that how human judgment, that lady from without any computers told us that you can reduce the data drastically from there. So, science is a fundamental to the process. Tell me about it. What is that? You're saying I'm not a good in chemistry, but let me ask you a question. I want to change the topic a little bit. About pediatric obesity is why we are growing big. We have a lot of problems with the children. Eating not right, fast food. But instead of, I think we need to focus on some basic things in the country, right? We need to refocus on things that is required, these natural things. Susan lives in a countryside, and she has all the cows and everything, but we live in a city. So we need, how do we manage the kids into this natural food, what do you suggest?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think, if you go back to sort of education and understanding the issues involved, right? Like I've worked with parents for a long time, and I would say that every parent I've ever worked with, by and large wants to do the right thing for their child. And I think a lot of parents right now struggle, right? With they're busy, they're working, food is very expensive. It takes time and money to sort of buy whole fresh foods, right? And also, if you think about social determinants of health, there are food deserts, right? Like if you go to certain cities, right, the only store that you have near you is a convenience store where everything is preserved, right? And if you don't have a car, or if you don't have, other ways to sort of get to healthy food, then you eat what is near you. And so I think sometimes we can just say to parents, eat healthy and exercise and do all these things, right? But really that's just making people feel bad and not really addressing the root of the issue, right? So I think a big thing that I think if we really want to address pediatric obesity is thinking about, and even, thinking about school lunches. Oh my goodness, how do we help parents get healthy foods? Because again, I think if we can do that, the intrinsic motivation that parents have to want to do the best thing for their child will kind of carry us the rest of the way, right? So being able to allow parents to get access to healthy food, to understand what healthy food is, to build ways for kids to get exercise, right? So I think really going deeper and kind of supporting kids and parents is kind of where we have to start, in my opinion.
Dr. Ally, would you say that chronic pediatric conditions mirror adult chronic conditions? Are we one and the same, or are there differences?
That's such a great question. It's been so long since I took care of adults. I don't know about adults anymore. But I would say, I think, thinking of my own parents, I would say, yeah, I think there are a lot of parallels there, right? For sure. Yeah. And I
didn't think of it until you were just talking, but when we say what's happening with pediatric obesity, well, what's happening with adult obesity? I mean, the chronic condition, I think, is human, and I don't think it has an age anymore. I think we have chronic conditions that we need to address from stem to stern. Let's go back to that good night's sleep and good night in nutrition and having support from early till late in every facet of our health. So. But the earlier we can catch it, the better. So we love our pediatricians and anyone who takes care of a pediatric population. In my book, are top notch. They're always such nice, kind, brilliant people. I take care of rotten old adults because we've been having stuff for a very long time. But helping our pediatrics, it's a brilliant way to be. Thank you so much for that.
Dr. Allyson, you're really. I want to give you a final word for it. The education that you said, that teaching compassion, it stuck with me very good, because teaching your parents, some of the people probably they want to teach good things, to the parents, to the children. They don't know, even as educated I am, and with the 2 master's degrees, still if somebody would have told me, compassion as an education, teach them. I would have paid more attention to it. So this is you're doing a fantastic work in that direction, bringing this forefront to all these things. Thank you so much. Tell us a final word. What is the future of the children, and what we are going to do better for our next generation?
Well, I really hope, I think I love that we're talking about this. I love that you guys are exploring this. My deepest passion is that we can sort of help to better support kids in all aspects of their lives, particularly educationally. I'm very committed to increasing the detection and support of learning differences in kids. And I hope I hope we can move the needle on that, because I think if we can get kids learning differences diagnosed and supported, it will revolutionize the world and change their lives. So
bravo. I don't think there's a parent with ears that have heard you say that would not agree with you wholeheartedly. You have 1, 2, 3, however many children, and they all learn differently. And then how that is dealt with from the very first days goes through their entire life, their perception of themselves, where they fit in the world, and how they function personally and professionally that stage is set early on. So thank you for that. That is huge. If you need help, I don't know how to help, but I'm there.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for the honor and privilege to have you. Thank you, Dr. Ally. Stick with us for a couple of minutes after the podcast. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Dr. Allyson.
We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it